Welcome to Top 5, a show where we count things down from number 5 all the way to number 1. This week on the show, might as well stay in the movie category for a while longer until we can exhaust that topic completely. This week, Top 5 Sci-Fi movies of the 90s. Top 5 sci-fi movies of the 90s, and there are certainly a lot of them out there. And this was a hard list, but Matthew is here. I'm going to let him take a crack at his top 5 movies of the 90s with his number 5.
My number 5 probably honestly should be higher on the list just because of its effect on the universe at large. But I feel like it's at number 5 for two reasons. One, and pretty much always have been a little bit of a, I don't like the popular things person. And as I've aged, I feel like I've gotten out of that. But in the 90s, 1991 specifically, I was one of those people who was really surprised to love Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Now, the thing about Judgment Day, that the first thing that I noticed is they spelled judgment in a different way than I'm used to. And I always thought that it was spelled wrong. But honestly, for my money, Judgment Day is actually a better movie overall experience than The Terminator. I feel like The Terminator is a better story. I feel like The Terminator may be more tightly plotted and put together in a different way. But for some reason, Terminator 2 really, for me, encapsulates what all of the Terminator movies end up trying to recapture.
You know why that is,
You have
right?
that moment. Yes, I do. Money.
No.
Dollars.
So, Terminator, the superior of the Terminator movies, is at its heart a horror movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is all about this unknown thing that just won't stop. It is basically Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers all wrapped into a cybernetic skin, right? Terminator 2 is an action movie that relies on big, giant set pieces and big, giant explosions. And that's why I think people like Terminator 2 a lot more than Terminator, even though it is the superior movie, mainly because it's got these big action sequences. And, Terminator, the first movie, I think the action doesn't pick up until almost 40 minutes in. A lot of it is
halfway into that movie.
Yeah, before things really explode for the first time. I mean, it's not until after the club shootout, which isn't even that big of a action piece, but it's when the Terminator comes in and at the police station and does his "I'll be back" and then blows away the police. That's when the movie kind of ticks up. But then it gives the audience a chance to take a breath and catch their breath and let's build some bombs, and then we go into the final big chase. Terminator 2 doesn't really have that. Terminator 2 is first we blow this up, then we blow that up, then we blow this up even bigger, then we've got this chase, then we've got a bigger chase, then we've got this thing, and then finally the end. And that's why a lot of people like Terminator 2. And it's not money. It's literally these are two different movies.
I like Terminator 2 also because I feel like the use of Sarah Connor in Terminator 2 feels a lot more modern, because you are right, Terminator has a lot of the tropes of a horror movie, including that final girl trope. Because we get to the end and you're like, oh, well, she's alive, she's going to go, she knows she's going to have a son and do her thing. But she's also, I feel like in Terminator, I think she's supposed to be like 19 or 20. She seems like kind of a feckless young woman who gets wrapped up into something and ends up spending most of the movie on the run. Whereas in Terminator 2, Sarah turns around and just turns into a complete action hero and starts blowing things up herself. And that's kind of fun. Although I do believe that the liquid metal guy ruined science fiction for a good 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Terminator 2, Judgment Day, without one of the E's, like they say in Britain, is still my number 5. Very, very good movie.
Well, my number 5 also is an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie from the 1990s. In fact, it came out in 1990. It's Total Recall. This is one of these trippy sci-fi movies where it's based on Philip K. Dick. We can remember it for you. Wholesale short story But in this story, Arnold Schwarzenegger keeps having these recurring dreams that he's on Mars and doing something. And a friend convinces him, hey, you should go and do one of these total recall things where they implant these memories into your head to make you think that you've had this vacation or adventure or whatever it is that you want. I mean, essentially VR, but, in your brain forever. And he goes to the place. And if you pay close attention at the beginning of the movie when he's going into the total recall, there's things in there like action movie spy something. He's got all these things of what he wants to do, and then as he is being put under, suddenly he is freaking out because he's had all these memories blocked, uh and he realizes that, oh no, I'm really a secret agent working with the resistance trying to free Mars from the evil corporations, and I must get my ass to Mars in order to save the population there. And of course, then it's just a total banger of a movie from beginning to end as Arnold goes to Mars and fights his way through corporation goons and closed off vents and people who have
Michael
mutations.
Ironside,
Yeah. And at the end of the
Captain
movie, you are
Jellicoe.
really left with this question of, because they're standing on Mars as the atmosphere is starting to fill up with real air, and Arnold Schwarzenegger is like, "Oh my gosh, I just realized, what if this is all part of the Total Recall?" And
Hmm.
then it was like, "No, kiss me now before it all ends." And then you're kind of left with wondering, was he just experiencing implanted memories, or was
Right.
everything that you watched for the last hour, did it really really happen? And I really
I
like that kind of twist. Plus, the special effects are pretty cool with Arnold's eyes being sucked out of his head and in the vacuum of Mars. It's all really cool looking.
Yeah, it was almost on my list, and it got pushed out by a dark horse contender.
Mm,
But I think that the ambiguity at the end of Total Recall is what makes it a really, really great movie.
hmm.
It's like my number 5.4.
Yeah, there you go.
However, my actual number 4 is, and I think I can't remember if it's you or Rodrigo who says, enjoy trash media. Is that you?
Yeah, as much as I complain that a couple of my students just watch, and Matthew watches just some of the trashiest,
Oh,
dumbest movies in the world, just the worst movies in the world. I actually encourage people to watch really bad trash media,
mhm,
because it gives you an appreciation for the really, really good stuff. And it gives you options to say, this is what's been done before. These are the mistakes that this particular film made or didn't make or whatever.
mhm.
And that's why there is, and I've got a whole like hour-long lecture on why you should embrace bad media. The other thing I also say is consume mass quantities, right? Meaning
Right.
absorb as much as you can, whether it's good, bad, television, podcasts, etc. So yes,
Yeah.
that is what I say.
And I have always believed in both of those theories, which I think is one of the reasons why we've successfully been on podcast together for the last 15 years. But it does go back to a point in my life when I watched really trashy movies on television on Saturday nights. And so when I went into the film in 1996 to watch Tim Burton's Mars Attacks exclamation point, I feel like I have to say it is unequivocally the best movie I've ever seen based on a bubblegum card series from the 1950s. And I will stand by that argument. There is no way you can't convince me that this movie with Jack Nicholson, some of the greatest actors in the world, Glenn
At
Close
the
is in
time,
this,
yeah.
Danny DeVito, Marty Short, with excellent actors, and also Tom Jones are in this. Princess Amidala and Shaft and Lisa Marie Presley. How can you not love a movie like that?
Yeah.
Not only that,
What
how
could go
can you?
wrong? What could go wrong with a movie with all those big name stars in it?
You know what? Jack Black makes, I think, exclamation point, possibly, asterisk, his movie debut here.
Yeah.
And the thing about this movie is a joke told at the top of your lungs by a 12-year-old, and it's so engrossingly silly. Uh, you know, Emphasis on the gross, because there is a lot of body horror. There is a lot of just utter, not just black humor, but complete gross out humor. and moments that are designed to make you uncomfortable. Tim Burton, I think, is like the master of just creeping me out on a regular basis. And so when they stapled Sarah Jessica Parker's head to her chihuahua, that's still, ugh, I can't watch that scene. But there's that wonderful sequence where the Martian Emperor comes down to meet with the president. And of course, for all of 1996, my dormitory was just full of people going, ack, 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 ack. And so, if you've never seen Mars Attacks, first of all,
I mean, it's not
uh,
a horrible movie, but go into it knowing it's a more of a comedy first and
oh,
sci-fi
it
second.
is a black comedy, but
Yeah,
it's a science fiction black
yeah, yeah,
comedy, and I
yeah.
feel like you said it in the '90s, and I think the '90s is the point where it's hard to get a pure anything. I mean, even
American Pie.
Total Recall is not necessarily all science fiction. It's also got all their stuff in there. But American Pie, there's like three things in there. But Mars Attacks, my number four. Go check it out. Michael J. Fox is wonderful in that. And if nothing else, you get to see Rod Steiger squashed by a giant alien. And
Hmm.
how many movies can you say that about?
Yeah, only about one or two.
Yeah, exactly.
My number four is also about aliens attacking, but this time it's the form of the bugs that are coming to kill us, and we must kill them first. And to be a citizen means you must be part of the military-industrial complex. And it is also, like my number five, directed by Paul Verhoeven, Starship Troopers from 1997. A lot of people don't get the fact that, like Mars Attacks, which is a black comedy,
Yeah.
Starship Troopers is also, in a sense, a comedy in that it is a satirical take on militarism, propaganda, fascism. It is poking fun of these things and just saying, look at how ridiculous this is. But oh, by the way, there's a couple of really hot girls in it, and one of them gets undressed, and the special effects are really cool. And oh, by the way, it's got Doogie Howser in it. And so I think very much like what's going on with the boys right now, a lot of people didn't realize until just recently that Starship Troopers is, you're not supposed to really be cheering for
Yeah.
for Johnny.
No,
He
it's
his
not a hero
fascist.
thing.
Yeah, it's really a great look at fascism. And I remember watching this with my friend Dave in California when I lived there. We would all get together and we would just laugh at this movie, just at how crazy this is in people falling down especially the propaganda hole on this piece. But from the special effects side, that's what I really, really liked about Starship Troopers. And I still think today that movie holds up for the special effects. And I think from what Verhoeven was trying to do with the movie, I think he also succeeded in that as well. So Starship Troopers definitely earns a spot at number four on my top five sci-fi movies of the 1990s.
Nice.
Moving on to number three now, Matthew. What do you got?
Number three, I think, is the one that's going to bug the most people. But I maintain that, as we said, it's a hybrid film, so it's a psychological dramedy kind of slice of life turns into something horrible movie, but it definitely is science fiction. And if you've ever directed a television show, and God help me, I've directed a whole lot of crappy shows, you know that it's completely and utterly science fiction. There is no way that the events of The Truman Show from 1998 could ever or would ever happen. But it is the story of a
Wait,
time.
I would argue that to an extent there are segments of the Truman Show that would never happen, but if it's not
Mhm.
for the Truman Show, we do not have TikTokers, YouTubers, and Mr. Beast who are taking their lives and putting them out there in social media to gain celebrity. The only difference is
I
those people know that they are doing it, and Truman is does not know that he is in this made up world.
I would argue that the language specifically, some of the specific visuals and, for lack of a better word, the sort of phraseology that you see or the specifics of it, you are absolutely true. But I think that we had already seen by 98 the Joe Schmo show. We'd seen a good 7, 8 seasons of The Real World. we had seen the original,
Yeah.
what was it, the documentary from
Hmm.
'73. But definitely, The Truman Show is
Joe Schmo,
science
by the way,
fiction.
came out in 2003, so
Did
you're
it?
a little ahead of
Okay.
there on there. Yeah,
I thought it was '98. My bad.
yeah, yeah.
But here's the thing: The Truman Show is about an undisclosed time, which is either 1950 or 1999, where a corporation legally adopted a child and basically started televising his entire life. And by the time we meet him, he's in his early 30s, and the producer is absolutely adamant that he is going to have the first on-screen uh, consummation of a marriage and impregnation of a character in his show. Now, it is a worldwide phenomenon. Everybody watches it. It does kind of presage the streaming era of today, but also everybody watches it at the same time, which doesn't make any sense to me
Well,
because it's a
no, it's
24-hour
yeah, it's
channel.
a 24-hour channel, and there are people that watch it in off hours. So if you made the comparison to Real World, or not Real World,
Hmm.
the Celebrity House dumb show, uh,
Hmm.
the
Big Brother.
where yeah, Big Brother, where people could actually watch that show live 24/7, because I remember when I was covering the digital webcast era, I was talking about there are these live streams that you can literally log into certain cameras in the house and watch these people
Yeah.
24/7. The primetime part of the show was, hey, what's going to happen during Truman's day? And so, like the overnight stuff when he's going to bed or when things are winding down for the day, people don't watch that. But it is like, oh, let's see Truman do his day, and then any kind
Right.
of the shows that spin off of that. Here's what Truman did today, highlight show, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. I feel like, when you see the audience segments,
Mm-hmm.
you do see there's one recurring Japanese family that keeps popping up. And I feel like either they're showing it anachronically or it's something where they are watching like the feed that you're seeing in the United States, which means that they're 12 hours. I don't know. Nonetheless, it is a fascinating story of humanity. And the weird part, the crazy part, is that they hired Jim Carrey, who I have described as a human cartoon, put him in this role and said, okay, be human. And of course, he'd just come off of Ace Ventura. He'd just come off of The Mask. He was known for being, waha, big, broad comedy. And this is a kind of a dark character, multifaceted. He's haunted by the loss of his father. He's pining for a girl that he barely knew. He's unsure what's wrong with his world, but he knows that something is wrong with his world. And Jim Carrey pulls that all off. And at the end of the movie, there is one moment that always sticks with me because William from Westworld, Ed Harris, is talking to him. He's finally broken the fourth wall, and he's telling them, "I know you better than you know yourself." And Jim Carrey just snaps at him, "You never had a camera inside my head." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this man can act too." It's really cool. If you've never seen The Truman Show, it's probably on cable somewhere right now because I know that I've seen it 150 times, and I always stop at least for a little while. It's got Laura Linney in it, which is nice, and a whole lot of people that you'll look and go, I know them from something. Why do I know them? And then you'll get hooked by the whole story and you'll see Paul Giamatti. So you got that going for you, which is
Yeah.
nice.
There is a Twilight Zone episode from 1989 called Special Service. And so
Hmm.
when Twilight Zone or when Truman Show came out, I was like, wait a minute, this is just that Twilight Zone episode, Special Service, where a man discovers that there's a camera behind his bathroom mirror, and that his life has been secretly been recorded for a cable television show for, I don't know, the last 5 years or something like that. And he's a big celebrity, but he goes about the real world. He moves about the real world, and everybody is playing along to know that this is a show and they can't break this guy's illusions. And now that he knows that he's part of a TV show, he starts
Right.
acting, a little weird, different. And so the cable ratings go down. And then finally, at the end of the episode, a guy comes in to remove the camera. And the guy, I forget what his name is just kind of like, oh, so that's it. And the technician is like, yep, that's it. And kind of gives him a wink, like maybe it's not over. Interesting thing about that episode, written by J. Michael Straczynski. Many people know
Hmm.
him from his comic books. So If you can track
Mhm.
down the episode Special Service, you will see a lot of similarities between that and The Truman Show. So,
Mm.
my number three is a movie. I think it's Darren Aronofsky's student film, if I remember. It's definitely his directorial debut. But
Mhm.
this is a movie about a man who is so obsessed with mathematics and finding patterns in things that he is building a computer to help track the stock market and predict the stock market. And he's using this with like somehow ants are involved in it. I don't remember what the ants bit was all about, but it devolves quickly into madness and definitely sci-fi because he starts to become paranoid that all these organizations are out to get him because he's unlocked the code. He thinks these ants have something to do with it. He has these horrible migraines, which may be exacerbating a lot of the symptoms that he's having. He gets involved in the cabal and is trying to find patterns there. And it just goes places until at the very end when you have a very, very shocking moment on how our central character is going to get all this information out of his head. It's definitely sci-fi just because of the absurd nature of what the character is trying to do. But if you want to see an actor's debut or director's debut film, then Pi from 1998 is definitely a movie worth checking out. I remember even before I got my first DVD player, I would casually buy DVD movies on DVD because I knew that, oh, these are indie films. They're not going to be around for very long. I'll be getting a DVD player within a year. I'm going to, kind of pick these up. And I just saw this weird movie called Pi, and it had the symbol of pi on there. And I was like, I'm going to pick this up, and I cannot wait to watch it. And I bet it was one of the very first 5 to 10 movies that I ever purchased on DVD and really
Mm.
opened up. And of course you got it at Suncoast Video because that's where you got all your movies in the 90s. And
Mhm.
that really kind of started this, path to discovering a lot of independent films beyond mainstream, which is what you normally saw in movie theaters. So Pi, my number three sci-fi movie of the 1990s.
Yeah.
Hold on,
I
everybody.
I
Oh, go
oh,
ahead. Go ahead.
I did not find an Aronofsky film that I didn't like until 2022, so
Which one was that?
The Whale.
Oh, okay. All right. There you go. All right, everybody.
Mm.
Hang on. We'll be right back. We are into our top two sci-fi movies of the 1990s. Matthew, what do you have for your number two?
My number 2 is a film from 1994. It is a film that unites 2 generations of a sci-fi franchise, but it does it in a way that made everybody mad and has been widely regarded as a bad idea. And yet, I still love Star Trek Generations, partly because of Malcolm McDowell and William Shatner engaging in one of the greatest scenery chewing contests ever put on film and having a moment where Sir Patrick Stewart walks into this scenery chewing contest and says, "All right, I'll join in." And it's really, really fun on that level. But Generations is really sort of, I think it was designed as just a transitional point for the Star Trek movies to go from the original series cast, who were getting a little long in the tooth. I mean, they were all in their 60s and 70s. They didn't want to be in these movies anymore. And so we see for the first time the actual fate of James T. Kirk. Uh, Again, with an asterisk, because that has been retconned a dozen times over at this point. I think he was immediately resurrected as a Borg according to actual Star Trek canon. But you do get a moment where Kirk and Picard get to bond, they get to hang out, and then we get to see Kirk's death. But because Kirk dies in a Star Trek The Next Generation movie, it doesn't really hold the same sort of, I don't know, cachet. It doesn't have the impact that I feel like it wanted to, that it should have had. And it's an odd movie in a lot of ways, and yet I still love it. There's a moment where you realize that the new captain of the Enterprise taking over from James T. Kirk is Cameron from the Ferris Bueller movies.
Mm-hmm.
So, good work, Cameron, for growing up to be a Starfleet captain. But you do have a weird focus on action movie tropes for a movie starring, two men in their 50s and one man in their 70s. but it's still good. It's not great. It's not perfect, and I mean it's not even the best of the Star Trek movies. I think technically it's Star Trek 6, no, 7. So according to the even odd theory, it's not going to be a great one. But I still love Generations simply because you do have that moment where Kirk and Picard are riding on their horses, and Kirk leaps across the chasm, and then you see him get really, really dismayed. And then they realize what's going on, and they're like, "Oh, the universe in danger? Everybody gonna die if we're not there? All right, I'll help you." It's a nice moment, and it does give you the balance of man who's okay with his head, man who wears a giant, giant hairpiece, and yet they get along, they coexist.
Yeah, cool. Um, in 1994 and maybe early 95, Squirrel Brian introduced me to Leon the Professional, which at the time was a really kind of very cool, kind of revenge driven movie. Today, it maybe doesn't hold up as well because of some of the underlying themes that run throughout the film. But in 1997, I was able to check out Luc Besson's The Fifth Element. Uh, definitely using inspiration, and I believe Mobius was definitely a um,
Oh, absolutely.
one of the designers of the film or helped design the art direction of the film. If not, I know Besson has gone on record to say that he's a huge fan of Mobius's style. But man, The Fifth Element is a movie that blew me away just because of its use of color and action and special effects, and the editing is so good in this movie that I'm just sitting in the theater just blown away by how good this is. It's got Bruce Willis and Mila Jovovich in it. If you didn't know that already, I think that it's funny. I think that it pokes fun at a lot of sci-fi in itself. But for an
Mhm.
adventure film, holy crap, The Fifth Element is great. And Chris Rock as Ruby, is it Chris Rock? Yeah, as
Mm,
Ruby Rod.
Chris Tucker. Chris
Chris
Tucker.
Tucker. Sorry. Yeah, Chris
Yeah.
Tucker as Ruby Rod is just still today. I think that again, whatever the current controversy is with Bassan, whatever you think of Bruce Willis or Mila Jovovich, uh, I think that this movie still holds up today, and it's a lot of fun to watch. And so that's why The
It
Fifth
is.
Element is my number two.
The thing that I love about it is that one of the movie posters is a direct parody of the poster for Star Trek 2. And I cannot help but love that.
Mm-hmm.
That level of commitment to the gag of we're going to do this and we're going to poke fun at science fiction movies. I love that.
Yep. All
But
right, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the top of our list. We have hit our number ones. Matthew, what is your number one sci-fi movie of the 1990s?
my number one sci-fi movie of the 1990s is also a superhero movie. And I will argue to my dying day that it is one of the perfect superhero movies. And that is 1990's Darkman. Because Darkman embraces comic books and the tropes of comic books and science fiction and all of these just crazy, over the top, just crazy, mad ideas. The ideas that you can only get in other media, or at least it seems that way until we actually sit and watch this film. But it is actually a movie that I believe is the movie debut of Liam Neeson, who today is known as Taken and or Qui-Gon Jinn. I mean, he's been in everything, including A Million Ways to Die in the West, which, I mean, nobody has 100% perfect movies. But the thing about Darkman is Darkman starts with Dr. Peyton Westlake. He's not Irish, but he sounds completely Irish. And he's trying to create synthetic skin. And magically, just as Otto Octavius ends up having a power that gives him 8 arms, and, just as Dave Vulture becomes the Vulture, his synthetic skin is what he needs to survive after an explosion burns off all of his skin. And his wife, or girlfriend, I guess, I think it's his wife, who is played by Fargo, Frances McDormand from Fargo. There is a moment in this film where she sees the explosion, she sees her man dying and screams, And then the camera does this weird CGI twisty thing and clothes her in black, and all of a sudden she's standing at his graveside. And it is the closest thing I have ever seen to one of those Dave Gibbons Watchmen smash cuts in film,
Hmm.
where you see somebody go, oh, they're barely keeping their head above water, cut to Rorschach drowning in a train. So if you've never seen Darkman, first of all, you're not alone. I'm sure many of the people listening right now are like, what's Darkman? But Darkman is the perfect superhero story. He's not the perfect superhero, and the science fiction elements in it are mostly there to keep it from feeling like a superhero movie because we're still in that post 89 Batman phase where filmmakers seem to be ashamed of the bits and pieces that come with a superhero film. So you can't do, hey, here's Superman, hey, here's Iron Man, not just because the technology doesn't exist, but because they feel like it seems like they're ashamed of that. They worry that the audience is not going to take it seriously. So he gets a burned face and some bandages and a black coat, and then he fights one of the scariest villains ever, by the way. Just absolutely terrifying. Larry Drake as Durant. There
Hmm.
is a scene with a cigar cutter in this movie that is just terrible, and still I can't talk about it without getting the chills and being like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. It's terrible, it's terrible, terrible. But I want you to go watch it, so
Yeah,
make of that what you will.
if you haven't seen Darkman, you really should. This is a Sam Raimi joint. It was co-written by him, based on a short story by him, where he's paying
Mhm.
homage to the Universal movies of the 1930s. So there's definitely, the Invisible Man, the Mummy, etc. in this as well. I also
Mhm.
see this as kind of maybe Sam Raimi's early calling card for let me direct a superhero movie, because it's like almost a decade later that we get
Mhm.
to see him do Spider-Man. And if you watch Darkman and then you watch Spider-Man, you will see a lot of the same Raimi uh, elements first show up in Darkman that he then reuses again for
Yes.
Spider-Man, reflections in the lenses, that kind of thing. So it is really a really good movie for people to check out. And also, before people fire off all the emails, yes, we know that Liam Neeson's first role was actually in the movie Excalibur from the 1980s. So
That doesn't count.
you don't
He
need
wasn't
to,
in that.
yeah, he was.
No,
Yeah,
he
he was.
wasn't.
Yeah, he was.
That was actually his cousin, Liam
No, so
Neeson. They're often confused.
you don't need to send us emails on that, everybody.
Yet
All right.
nobody was going to,
Time
Stephen.
for, oh, you would be surprised at the number of emails that I get each and every week. Okay, on to my number one, the best sci-fi movie of the 1990s. There is no argument. You can say, well, what about this? What about this? You would be wrong in every single case, because the best sci-fi movie of the 1990s happens to be a story about a friendship between a little boy and a being from space. And I know you're thinking, oh, Stephen, E.T. didn't come out in 1990s. No, of course not. I'm talking about the better rendition of E.T., because it all takes place at the height of the Cold War in the 1950s, where an alien war machine crashes into the planet Earth. But because it crashed into Earth, it's knocked its programming out, and a little boy discovers this iron giant and befriends him and tells him, "No, you don't have to be a weapon. You can be whoever you want." And in the end, when the military freaks out and starts firing nuclear weapons, it's up to the Iron Giant to save everyone. And so, Iron Giant, the best movie, sci-fi movie of the 1990s, and one Vin Diesel. Again, you could say Vin Diesel used the Iron Giant as his calling card for later when he would play Groot, because he's very much into the one syllable characters in his voice acting. So there you go. Iron Giant, just a beautiful animated movie. It's just wonderful top to bottom. If you haven't seen it, you really we've shared some really good movies with you so far, but you really need to stop what you're doing and go and see that movie. And if you
Mm.
don't like it, what's wrong with you? This is Brad Bird. If everybody is like, "Oh, The Incredibles is so good," you need to go watch The Iron Giant again, because that's all him top to bottom. Unfortunately, I don't remember the reason why, but people just didn't go see this in the theaters. This is one of those um, movies where the studio didn't promote it correctly. This is I want to say this is a Warner Brothers movie. Yeah, Warner Brothers. They didn't promote it right, and people just didn't go see this in the theaters. They just didn't go, and they didn't go, and they didn't go. And then all of a sudden, after it was out of the movie theaters and it came out on DVD, people were like, why didn't anyone tell me about the Iron Giant? And it is definitely a fantastic, fantastic movie. Hogarth? Who names their kid Hogarth? It's also got Christopher McDonald as the bad guy. And
Shooter McGavin.
Yeah. Go figure, right? It's got Jennifer Aniston, Vin Diesel. It's got John Mahoney. It's got a great cast in it as well. There you go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what do you have for your top 5 sci-fi movies of the 1990s? Well, you can use the comment section down below on the Major Spoilers website to share your thoughts, or even better, you can head over to the Major Spoilers Discord server, where you can join for free and get into the top 5 channel, where you can share your thoughts on this episode, share your top 5 list. Everyone else will share their top 5 lists. Why? Because everyone loves a list, and we will talk with you soon.
This podcast is copyright 2024 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.